Okay, so this is an experiment that hasn't really worked so well. So I drew out a sketch in HB pencil onto a gessoed board. I sprayed it with a fixative, let that dry, and then I've come in and put this very watery wash over it. And as you can see, if I bring the camera in, you can see that the charcoal has mixed into the paint and made a bit of a mess. Because the charcoal's run, is a bit more difficult now to see the underpainting or the underdrawing. So I'm going to have to probably not worry too much about that. I might draw again over the top. I didn't really want to do that because then the actual painting is going to get muddy in the same way. So I think I'll persevere with it. I'll probably paint over it or sketch over it in paint, which is what I usually do anyway. This isn't an experiment I put chalky down to experience, and it didn't work. Never mind, we move on. Let's sketch it out in paint. This is a multi-row painting, so I've painted on 4 different panels, separate panels, and they can be swapped vertically and horizontally in order to create a new composition. So the reason I did a colour background on this one, which I haven't done with my other multi-part T-scapes, is that I want a lot of the crockery in this to be white. So I put a coloured background on, didn't really know what colour, so I went with a magenta, which has turned out very pink after watering it down so much. Now the teapot. So the teapot's here across these 2 panels. Now for the cups, I'm using a cobalt blue mixed with a bit of raw umber just to take away the really strong hue that you get from the tube, and then mix that with white just to lighten it, and that'll be the first colour on here. What colour the final crockery will be will depend on how things progress. I think it'll be some form of blue, possibly more of a teal, which I use a lot, possibly a brighter version of this. But I'm just going to sketch it in with this, it's really quite a grey blue now. Now this little jug, I don't think you can see on camera, I've got a little milk jug here, which this time is going to go across, side to side across the panels. Okay, I'm going to swap over horizontally. So the coffee pot comes to the left, teapot comes to the right, and then I've got coffee cup coming here. I don't worry too much in my paintings about keeping everything the perfect size. It's really about the concept of a tea party. I'm not going for real life paintings. I want them to be representative but not photographic. So this one will straddle the left and right panels again, just to tie in the composition. And I always leave this little gap as well. I quite like the idea of having the scene, if I coloured it all in the same, they would all just meld into one shape. And because I don't fuss over too much over the shadows and the forms, this sort of effect I think is quite nice. It gives the painting a bit of interest. Oh, and I've got another cup sketched here, but I'm not sure if I like that, so I'm gonna ignore that sketched cup. I'm going to move it down a little bit. When you go over an edge onto another panel, I need to create enough of an overlap for it to be distinctive. So this is quite small, but I think it's okay. It's enough of a shape. Whereas if the panel stops here and you just have the spout coming on the edge, it wouldn't make sense when this panel was in this position, and would only make sense when it came over here. So I'm running into this here, is that I've put this cup in, and now I want to put the saucer in. If I'm not careful, the saucer is going to come very close to this edge already. So either I need to keep it on this panel, or I need to make sure it's deliberately straddling the two panels. So let's move them vertically and we can have a look. See, so as it is, the saucer would come down. See, and it would just scrape here. Let's put it in. I can show you what I mean. So if that was the saucer, which is going to be even worse because it's going to come over this crossover. See, it's difficult to draw because the joins are distracting to me. But there would be something like that, and then this would just look very weird when it's back in this orientation. You've just got this small strip of blue that just doesn't make sense in that orientation of panel. So this is the most difficult part of doing these panels for me, is making sure that the composition works in every orientation and making sure that the overlaps are sufficient enough to make sense in all orientations. And that cup and saucer there isn't going to work. So what to do about it? I think maybe we just move it over here. Slightly wet to paint, so I think we need to move it. Let's move it here. Then you're going to start touching. Again, they can overlap. If they don't overlap enough, they look a bit weird. If they overlap too much, it just becomes a massive cup colour. So these are the real struggles we go through. Maybe something more like that. Keep it on this panel. Actually, completely, I think. Yeah, something like that. It may well move. Yeah, nothing. This is sketching out composition. Anything can. That's very wonky. So anything can move. There's none of this is set in stone. That's too dry to rub off already. You can take a bit of that off. I don't want it to be predictable that everything has to go over a panel. So I'm going to keep the vase in this space. Yeah. Being careful not to have it in line with the teapot, the coffee pot. So I want to have it off centre from the coffee pot. So this is a bit small, bit onto the panel, but that's okay because there's going to be flowers coming out of it. So the continuation of the object will still be there on this panel, even though that piece of the vase is relatively small. Okay, so that'll be the vase. Don't think the vase is going to be white, but I'm just going to paint it in white so that I can get a more vibrant colour. I think we'll have some overlapping. I don't want everything just being there in its own space. Having a bit of overlap. The flowers that are coming out of here kind of gives it a bit of depth. Swap these over again. So these are 20mm wooden panels, cradles I think they call them, cradle panels. So I nearly always paint on wooden boards. So there's a wooden board on a cradle frame. Okay, so this is the composition sketched out. I'm fairly happy with it. I think the all four orientations worked quite well. They'll change inevitably as I go through and paint them. I might add a bit something into this gap as I go, but altogether a good sketch. So this is where I got to yesterday. The flowers are gone. I didn't really like how the flowers were turning out. I don't think they were too large. They weren't the right colour. It's just not happening. So they've gone. I'm going to carry on working with this now. I'm going to put in some orange flowers, complement the purple tones in the painting, and put some detailing on these. So the original plan was to keep the teapot and the coffee pot to be white. I think now I've put this background in, which is very pale. The white obviously is not contrasting, so I'm going to, I think, probably put some pattern on that. Not the floral design I was originally thinking. I think probably a stripe, but we'll see how that develops over the morning.